It's a great kind of weekend here on Radio Boss. Look, I got to tell you, we've been talking about this Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and on the line is a buddy of mine. First of all, he's a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame voter. Okay, that's first. That's first things first. But I mean, he's done so many other things. As a matter of fact, he's got a book out called "It Was All a Dream: Biggie and the World That Made Him." Right, so you already know he's into the music and all of that. Matter of fact, you see him right there. He's got the book right behind him. He is a senior sports and culture reporter with Andscape, which is part, of course, of ESPN. And as a matter of fact, he's a Hampton grad also. He and I had a chance to work together on the very first HBCU Today that ESPN Radio put on back in 2024. And if you got a TV, you're going to remember him, of course, from Around the Horn. He's Justin Tinsley, joins us right here on Radio Boss. What's going on, Justin?
What's going on, bro? What's going on? I can't believe 2024 was the HBCU Today show. If you would have told me that was last year, I would have believed you, man. Time is a cheat code.
Man, it is. It is going by so fast. Of course, you and I had a chance to talk a little bit off camera about this Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. You're a new voter.
Yep.
Congratulations on that, first and foremost. That is pretty special and pretty big time. Even before I get to my particular gripes,
Yeah.
Can you speak to what are some of the criteria that you have to first of all even be on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame ballot?
Well, this was my first year voting on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame ballot, and even before I get into that, I'll tell a brief story what we talked about yesterday, like you said, off camera. And I didn't even know I was in the running to become a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame voter. I happened to just be checking my email probably around, I don't know, maybe around like 2.5 months ago. And I'm pretty sure I was watching a game, and I'm just sitting on the couch, just scrolling through my phone, just deleting. And I see something that says Rock and Roll Hall of Fame voting. Congratulations. And I'm like, okay, well, is this just spam email I'm getting? I open it, and it says, congratulations, you're part of a new class that is, being inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame voting board. And I'm like, did I apply for this? And I just didn't know. But it just happened to be a really close friend of mine who was speaking for me in those rooms. And apparently they had been trying to get me on the board for about 2 or 3 years. And for whatever reason, or for whatever criteria or boxes I checked off, they sent me that email, and they just told me to be on the lookout for, a ballot that was coming in within the next couple of weeks, and to just send it in as soon as we can, because they wanted to announce the I guess the inductees class of 2026 sometime this spring. And so the criterion, I guess you could say, was based on, one, obviously longevity, two, and not necessarily longevity, but impact while they were here, or while they were making music, or while they still are making music, catalog, audience influence, cultural influence. So it's not necessarily anything set to one particular artist, right? It's more broad topics that you have to consider. And so that's why, when I went into it, that's what I voted on, and that's how I voted. And again, I don't think this is talking out of turn when it comes to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame voting process. But I know they're trying to get younger, they're trying to get more diverse. And because here's the thing about music is subjective, right? There is no just one set genre that is like, oh, this is the form of music. Because when I hear Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, right? I don't hear just rock and roll anymore. It's honestly the Music Hall of Fame, and that's how it should be, right? But it's been branded as the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for God knows how long, so I get it. So I went into it voting off uh legacy, the artists and the music and the catalogs that really impacted me, growing up, and still impact me to this day, and the music that really influenced how I lived and soundtracked my life. So again, I have no problem telling who my ballot was. It was 7 names. I probably can't remember all 7, but it was Mariah Carey, who we're going to speak about. It was New Edition, who we're going to speak about. Luther, Sade, Wu Tang, of course. I believe I voted for. I believe no, I voted for Melissa Etheridge because I just believe her history and not just her music, but like the principles that she stood on and throughout her life. That resonated with me. So I had to go back and look at my ballot, but those were my that was my thought process going into the ballot, and that those were some of the general things they told us to consider when picking the names on our ballot.
No doubt about it. And I think there were it may have been like 24 nominees, something like that. 18 got in. I mean, if you look at some of the other
Yeah.
just general halls of fame, for instance, let's just take the Major League Baseball, or excuse me, the Cooperstown or the Baseball Hall of Fame. You
Yeah.
have to have, I think, 70 or 75% of
Yep.
the vote. There's certain criteria. Here, it wasn't a certain amount. Like all 24 could have conceivably gotten in. Is that correct? Like it wasn't a certain amount that you had. Well, you said you had to vote for 7.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I had to vote for 7. I'm not I had to I'll look that up right now, but I don't know what I think there had to be a threshold, at least for the
Okay.
7
Yeah.
that I was, because here's the thing. When I was giving my ballot, I could only pick 7. So names like, MC Light, Queen Latifah, they weren't even on there. So I didn't even see them on my ballot. I believe, they were part of a different category of inductees. Obviously they still get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, so that's all that matters. But I didn't see a lot of those names. Obviously names like Billy Idol, Oasis, acts like that. I saw those, but I didn't see names like Fela Kuti, MC Light, Queen Latifah. What was the early influencer
Yes.
category? I didn't see those, but I'm glad they got in because obviously they deserve to get in. But yeah, but in terms of, like you said, Cooperstown being 75%, I'm pretty sure there was a percentage of the vote that you had to get, because if I remember, because I saw something a few days before, maybe about a week before I guess the announcement was made who got in and who didn't. Method Man tweeted something because Wu-Tang was below a threshold. And they were like, dang, man, I don't understand why we can't get in. But he was like, he wasn't hating on the people who were in front of Wu-Tang. He said they're obviously all deserving, but he didn't understand why Wu-Tang wasn't getting the votes. I also voted for Wu-Tang. I just need to make that clear. So they were below a threshold, and thankfully they crossed that threshold to get in this year.
No doubt about it. That's the voice of Justin Tinsley. He, of course, senior senior writer for sports and culture for Andscape, also a voter on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, as he joins us right here on Radio Boss. Look, Justin, I have no problem in terms of who got it. Before I even go there, to me, like, okay, Phil Collins. I thought Phil Collins should have been in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but because perhaps he was with a group called Genesis, maybe, I don't know if that had anything. And to me, like, if I think about Patti LaBelle probably should be, but her greatest hit was with a group called the LaBelles. So you have to separate, I think, those two. With that, from a criteria standpoint, for artists like that, is that sort of a separator as well? If you were with maybe a group before, maybe it, I don't know, hurts you to some degree as an individual or a solo artist, if you will.
Yeah, it's something I considered because Lauryn Hill was on the ballot too, and
Right.
like the Fugees, and so I do think, whether it's fair or unfair, I do believe voters probably look at that. And like you said, like, okay, well, yeah, Phil Collins, he probably should be in, but his biggest hit was with Genesis. And you mentioned Patti LaBelle. I think that those examples are more plentiful than we probably even realize right now, because I'm sure you could keep going down the list of things like that. So one thing I do know is when they send you the ballot, they don't tell you how to vote. They don't tell you like, hey, Phil Collins had his biggest hit over here, but we're considering him for solo induction, or Patti LaBelle had her biggest hit here and we're considering her for solo induction. Like, they give you the ballot and they tell you your heart feels. There's no like nudge you one way or the other. But I think that is the humanistic process of voting. I mean, obviously we see it votes counted, right? Whether it's the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or whether it's the elections we vote for public office. So it's all going to come down to the individual human experience and how, and in this case, how their ears hear it and how their heart feels it. Look, again, we'll get into certain artists that you feel should have been in there, and I have my own opinions on that as well. So, but there's nothing in the voting process that separates the group from the individual solo artist, unless the individual solo artist is on the ballot and not the group.
Yeah. Because I mean, to the point, you've got like Tina Turner is in 2 times as a solo artist, and then part of the Ike Tina Turner review.
Yep.
So you do have those artists that are in twice. Justin Tinsley joining us right here on Radio Boss. We're gonna step aside, take a break, come back with more. Because he feels like maybe there should have been some groups or individuals that should have been in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I certainly feel that way on this gripe edition of Radio Boss. Keep it locked. Welcome back to Radio Boss. We're talking Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Justin Tinsley is our guest. You've seen him, or you know him, of course, from Andscape with ESPN. He is the senior sports and culture reporter for Andscape, and is a member of he's a voter on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So, like, Justin, I look at the list, like, I don't know, like, I feel like, look, I'm a huge record collector, and I don't collect that in the reissues. It's all about the old
originals.
Thank you. Right. So I feel like a Billy Idol, even though maybe I didn't listen to his music as much, I feel like Billy Idol should be in. I feel like Iron Maiden should be in. Oasis. Like, I have no problem. Sade, I'm not 100% sure about Sade, if I'm honest. Luther Vandross for sure.
Yep.
But I have no problem with who's in. Problem I have is New Edition is not in, and I don't understand, because to me, much like Wu-Tang, and Wu-Tang, if I remember correctly, Wu-Tang's premise was they started out as a group. All of them were going to do solo projects, but they all came together at the end of the day. New Edition didn't start out that way, but that's how it ended up happening.
Yeah.
They had an album. Their first album was 83, 84, 85, then 86. There's a consistency pattern there. Not to mention, Bobby Brown was bigger than life at one time. Ralph Tresvant did his thing. BBD was doing their thing, but they came back as a collective. And by the way, Home Again in 1996 was the #1 record in all of the country. How does New Edition not get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
That's a really good question. And New Edition was an easy vote for me. I feel like, as you said, when you look at the history of boy bands, because that's what they started out as, right? They were young kids, and obviously we know about the venomous business practices that they had to deal with, especially earlier on in their career. But when you talk about the consistency of just their popularity, but the consistency and the quality of their hits, I mean, I hope they get in someday, and I hope they get in next year. I was hoping they get in this year. Obviously, I voted for them because, for me, they soundtrack. When you think about the sound of the 80s, and again, as you said, I don't necessarily have I don't have an issue with anybody who got in. I truly don't, because even though I may not listen to a lot of Iron Maiden or Oasis or even Billy Idol, I can understand, and obviously I'm very well aware of their music and familiar with it, but I don't embrace it the same way I do a New Edition or a Luther Vandross. It's just my upbringing. It's just the life experiences that I had. So when I look at New Edition's catalog, and the fact that, like you said, they had group hits. The people in the group went on to become huge solo artists, and I also have to mention Johnny Gill was a huge star. Johnny Gill is still making music in 2026 that sounds really good. So they check off every single box that a Hall of Famer should have, from just the quality of their music, the quality of their major hits, the impact of their major hits, the impact of the members in their group. So I hope moving forward, and once I learn to to understand the voting process more and really try to be more active within the voting community, New Edition is a group that I will speak up for until they get in, because if we're saying that Iron Maiden is important, and Iron Maiden is absolutely important, I don't want to take anything away from that group. I don't want to take anything away from their fan base. If Iron Maiden is important, New Edition is important, because they not only told us about the artistic beauty of the music industry, they also told us about the realities of the music industry, maybe not in their music, but in their experiences, their very public experiences as well.
Yeah, I mean, well, anyway, and like, okay, so let me move on, because I want to actually get to some of the artists you thought should have been in. Mariah Carey's one other, and I look at the longevity. I believe Mariah Carey's first album was 1990. So if you even look at the longevity, you look at maybe one of the greatest voices we've ever heard. You look at maybe a bit of a decline and then a resurgence with Jermaine Dupri, like, and she's still doing her thing. And you mentioned voting for Mariah Carey and for New Edition, even though they didn't get in. Your thoughts maybe on Mariah Carey, and then also who you thought should have gotten into this year's Hall of Fame.
Well, yeah, definitely thought New Edition should have got in. Mariah Carey, for me, so I'll ask a question for myself and I'll answer it to you. If I had to pick between Mariah Carey and New Edition, because I think both should have gotten in. I voted for both, and I will continue to vouch for both until they both get in. If I had to pick one of the two, if I had to pick one of the two, I would pick Mariah.
Okay.
And this is because Mariah is already in the Songwriters Hall of Fame. How can you be in the Songwriters Hall of Fame but not in the Music Hall of Fame when you're one of the biggest pop artists of all time? As you said, her first album came out in 1990. We understand how big the 1990s were in terms of cultural influence, right? Mariah Carey is one of the definitive voices of that decade that we still talk about in 2026. We're closer to the 2030s now than we are the top of the 2020s. And we're still talking about Mariah Carey as this really, honestly, a living icon. I understand there may be, people may meet Mariah and have personal feelings about her or whatever the case may be, but you cannot take away from what this woman did in the 1990s. It wasn't just one hit album. It wasn't just one or two hit records. She had a tidal wave of records. And as you said, her voice, I put her voice on the pantheon of like all-time great voices at her peak, right? I put her up there with Luther Vandross. I put her up there with Whitney Houston. I put her up there with the Marvin Gaye. You know what I mean? I put those Donny Hathaway. I put her, she's in that category as to where she sounds exactly like she does in studio live. Of course, in her peak, I know she had some voice issues. And like you said, even when people were counting her out in the mid 2000s, she returned with a bona fide classic record. I'm talking about one of the most important albums of the 2000s in the Emancipation of Mimi. We're talking hit after hit after hit, and she has so many disciples, or I guess you could say neophytes that came after her that look up to her in terms of being a pop star. I'm thinking people like Ariana Grande, who has expressed her, adoration for Mariah Carey over the years. I just don't think we can live in a world where Mariah Carey is not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And this is not a knock, obviously, on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame itself. This is just me saying, look, I take my voting prowess seriously, and I will do what I can to get Mariah Carey this honor, because she more than deserves it. And I guess if I have to start my campaign right now and just campaign throughout the year, I will do that for Mariah Carey, and I'll also do that for New Edition. But I also need to make it clear again, this is not a knock on anybody who got in, because they have their resumes and they deserve to be in. I'm just saying at some point, Mariah Carey and New Edition deserve to be in as well.
Senior sports and culture reporter with ESPN's Andscape, Justin Tinsley, also a voter on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, joins us right here on the program. I'm like you. You know who I'm going to campaign for?
Who is that?
And I have been campaigning for? the Pointer Sisters.
Ooh,
To me, because,
ooh.
and I'm going to tell you why, Justin. You mention it, rock and roll music, whatever. But if we want to take the genre and we want to take what it is in terms of rock and roll at the words, if you will, rock and roll.
Right.
To me, I mean, the Pointer Sisters define that in all kinds of genres of music, whether it's been rock and roll, whether it's been R&B, whether it's been folk, whether it's been country throughout the course of their career. Hey, look, Pointer Sisters won a Grammy in the country category in the 70s. Let's think about that. Let's think about the album with Jump and all that. I forget the name of the album, but that one album in the 80s that was super big. They were a model of consistency for some time and are still doing their thing. So that's someone, Justin, that I'm going to always have their back and deserve, I think, to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame of the Pointer Sisters.
Look, we just finished celebrating, as we should, what Beyonce did with Cowboy Carter, and the overwhelming success of what Beyonce did with that. I don't know if we get that album if not for the Pointer Sisters and what they did in the 70s, because everything, especially in music, for the most part, has a precedent, right? If you do something, if you make an impact, and honestly, that historically has not really accepted the creativity of people who look like the Pointer Sisters, of people who look like Beyonce. Obviously, they're far from the only Black artists who made country music. I think you have to include people like that, because it's not necessarily just about the longevity of a career, or it's also about how you change the sound and face of music. And I think a lot of people have done that, and the Pointer Sisters have done that. I know in different Hall of Fames in sports, they have categories, whether it's like off the field influence, or whether it's we see referees get inducted into the Hall of Fame. We see front office executives get inducted into the Hall of Fame. So it's not just what you did on the field, it's how you change the game, and it's how you evolve the game. So when you look at somebody like the Pointer Sisters, obviously they're in the game, right? But they also evolved the game. They made possible what so many people thought was impossible. So, and again, the Pointer Sisters, they're not the only example of that, but they're a very, very high level and excellent example of that. So, I mean, look, let me know. I'll join that campaign trail with you too. I can't guarantee we're going to get across the finish line next year, but I guarantee you at some point we will.
Yeah. What I've wrestled with for a couple of years, and this group has been on the ballot. I think this may have even been this year, may have even been at least the fourth or fifth time. Eric B. and Rakim.
Yeah.
I think when you talk about hip hop, particularly the late 80s, I mean, Rakim's a top 10 MC of all time. Yeah. Eric B, I mean, but they're the ultimate group, because we saw when Rakim went solo without Eric B, didn't go so well, and vice versa. So it's the ultimate group, dominated a genre of music that dominates the world right now. The issue I have is they had record label issues that hurt them. As rap evolved, particularly in the early 90s, they started to break up. But for the time that they were there, they were dominant. Is Eric B. and Rakim, should Eric B. and Rakim be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
The answer is resoundingly yes. Without a doubt, Eric B. and Rakim should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They're they're the group, and they're two artists that, when you talk about the importance of hip hop, they are part of the foundation. They are the forefathers. They are any artist that I saw a clip recently, and maybe it was from last year. Jay-Z was leaving some event and he saw Rakim. This is Jay-Z in like 2024, 2025. So he is well within the arc of who Jay-Z is in modern culture and in modern society, right? He saw Rakim and he fanboyed out, and he dapped him up, and he basically told him, he was like, without you, there is no me. And if you ask any great hip hop artist, I know Tupac spoke highly of Rakim when he was alive. Biggie spoke highly of Rakim when he was alive. Nas, you can make the argument that Rakim is Nas 1.0. You know, so like he is the blueprint for so many great MCs. Kendrick Lamar has shouted him out. Kendrick Lamar has sang his praises. So and again, we're just making a list at this point of people I just need to campaign for. You cannot, if we're saying that hip hop is the genre that really changed how music talks about the temperature of society. At its best, hip hop has done that. There's other forms and styles of hip hop that maybe not do that. But when we talk about the last 50 plus years with hip hop, and we talk about the artists that have really set the foundation for this thing of ours, Eric B and Rakim are at the very, very top of that list. So yes, they should be. And yes, you look, their time as a group may not have been as long as other groups, but the impact that they had for the time that they were together and the music that they made I mean, Paid in Full is a musical institution in this country. It's not just an all-time great hip-hop album. It is an all-time great music album, and it tells the story of America in its own way. So in my eyes, it has to be recognized in some way. They have to be recognized in the highest of manners. And so, yeah, Eric B and Rakim should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and hopefully we can make that happen sooner than later, because they are more than deserving of that opportunity. And I feel like that's part of the reason why I'm here. That I have to campaign for the artists I feel like should be in the same way, you know, other voters are campaigning for artists they feel like should be in. And I'm not saying that theirs are less worthy than mine. I just want to speak with the same volume as other artists get.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I think when Salt and Pepper got in, that was big. I thought Salt and Pepper deserved to get in because I think, what was that, last year, because of not just the influence, female hip hop. I mean, they were big.
Yep.
And in the same way, I feel like Eric B and Rakim should be in. I mean, I feel like it should be in. And to your point, even with the Paid in Full song, what was that, Derek B's with the European version that was international, that made Eric B and Rakim international in a time when hip hop was but it was like kind of sort of catching its legs, you know, sort of, if you will, in the really mid to latter part of the 80s. You mentioned Mariah Carey, you mentioned New Edition in terms of campaigning for anybody else. You're like, man, I'm gonna be on this ride, and I'm gonna say everything I can and do everything I can to get this group or artist into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it's actually an artist that I share the same birthday with, February 1st. None other than Rick James.
Okay.
To me, I like this is Rick James. Like, not only one of the more fascinating life stories that a person has ever lived, like the musical impact this guy had, excuse me, just it's so resounding, man. Like, Rick James is deserving to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Music Hall of Fame, however you want to call it, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, because he personified, honestly, what it was to be a rock star in a sense. And like, he made music that wasn't just popping on niche charts. He made music that lived on the Billboard Hot 100, the Billboard Hot 200 for albums and singles or whatever. Like, I just don't understand why he isn't in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We talk about Rick James, we talk about Tina Marie, we talk about all of their big records. Unless there's reasons that I'm not privy to, I don't understand why Rick James isn't in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, because his body of work and his impact suggests otherwise.
Yeah. So tell us again, the book is called, of course, It Was All a Dream, Biggie and the World That Made Him. And the book, if you're watching this, you can see the book to the left of Justin. I mean, what was the inspiration about the book? And and tell us a little bit about the book, and because of course we want to support you and support that and buy that book. Even I know it's been out 3 years, but we want to continue to support you.
Hey, look, if you don't have it, it's brand new to you. So like it doesn't matter, man. Yeah, so obviously I came up on Biggie Smalls music in the 90s, and Biggie Smalls, much like Tupac Shakur, right? Biggie Smalls is one of those American stories that is never not fascinating. It never gets less interesting to tell and examine. Now, I didn't, to be honest with you, and this is odd considering how the book writing process works. I didn't pitch this idea. This idea was pitched to me. So, and again, this is a trend. In 2019, I'm just going through my emails again, just deleting stuff, and maybe somebody needs to send me the Mega Millions or the Powerball numbers via email because I'm noticing something here. But seriously, I'm going through my emails and I see something with a subject line that says Biggie Smalls book interest question mark, and I'm like, I hadn't heard anything about a Biggie book coming out, but anyways, I almost deleted it, but thankfully I didn't. And it was an editor from Abrams Press. They're based out of New York, Manhattan. And the editor reached out to me and said, I've read some of your previous work, especially on hip hop and in particular on the Notorious B.I.G. And I wanted to gauge your interest on potentially writing a book that will come out in May 2022, which will coincide with Biggie's 50th birthday. And I'm like, so I Googled Abrams Press because I had to make sure this was a legit book imprint, right? They're far beyond a legit book imprint. They're excellent. And I Googled who the person was that interviewed that emailed me rather was beyond legit, and he's an incredible guy. Shout out to my guy Jameson Stoles from Abrams Press. And we jumped on the phone, and to make a long story short, by the end of January 2020, I had signed a contract to write this book, and they gave me my advance to do it. And I started booking travel to New York, to LA, to Atlanta, where he had a lot of ties, Chicago. And if you know the timeline of what I'm speaking on, I had to cancel all of those trips because by March 2020, we were all in the house. So the great majority, I would say probably all of my book was researched, interviewed, reported, and written while and I knocked out, I would say, at least 70 to 75 interviews for the book. I've reached out to at least probably 150, 160 people. So, some people declined, respectfully declined. Some people just never got back to me. That's just part of the game. And I knew while I was writing the book, D, that like I couldn't just do the standard. He was born, May 1972, died March 1997. He had some hit records here. I had to tell his story, or at least attempt to tell his story in a different way. I had to do it. I wanted to do it in context of what he lived through and experienced, even if he didn't realize he experienced it. So when you see the title, It Was All a Dream, Biggie and the World That Made Him, that's what this is about. It's just as much, excuse me, it's just as much of an examination of Christopher Wallace than it is a cultural examination of the societal, political, and cultural factors that Biggie Smalls grew up around. So when you read the book, it goes back and forth between Biggie's life and literally the world that made him. So I've gotten a ton of great feedback off the book. It still speaks for me in rooms that I don't get a chance to really speak for myself in a lot of times, and I love what it's done. Now, honestly, I'm trying to figure out what the hell my next book is going to be about.
you got to taste of that. And again, It Was All a Dream, Biggie and the World That Made Him. You can check out the book. It's by my man Justin Tinsley. You've seen him on ESPN a bunch, and as a matter of fact, specifically on Andscape, where he still does great work in terms of sports and culture reporting. He's the senior guy there as he joins us right here on Radio Boss. And he's also a voter on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Justin, man, this has been great, man. Really appreciate it. Look forward to talking to you real soon.
Hey, man, let me know whenever you want me to come back, brother. This is always a pleasure. You know, I always love working with you, D, man. Thank you so much for everything. And I'll be back on here soon, as long as you'll have me. How about that?
Absolutely.